Going live. It's Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about the Batman. So there was a there's a primary election in New York City. But if you don't live in...
Which effectively is the real election.
That's the thing. If you don't live in New York, the thing about our elections is that the general election basically never matters. The Democrat always wins. So, and they're closed primaries.
There are a couple places where that's not true.
Well, New York, yeah. There are bad parts of New York State and even bad parts of New York City. But
I think there's a handful of New York City Council people who are Republicans, literally a handful.
Yep. But basically, the Democratic primary is what actually matters, and it's a closed state, so only people who are members of the party can vote. And even in a relatively progressive place, like not that many people vote in the primaries. And this year, this election that just happened yesterday was a big goddamn deal for so many reasons. We're not going to get into it. This is not a news. This is just what we were doing.
There are, out of 51 people, there are 3 Republicans in the New York City Council.
But this was notable, one, because for some of the races, there were a ton of people. Like for our city council district, God, there were like 15 people on the ballot. It took me a while to research them and figure out who to vote for.
Yeah, ours also had quite a few, maybe 6 or 7, but we knew who they were. At least we knew enough. We knew enough about a few of them that we knew who to vote for and just ignored them.
Ours was so big that AOC was even like, of these like 16 people, these 6 are good, but I'm not going to tell you which of them to vote for. One of these 6.
Because you don't want to get, if you don't know enough, it's like,
yep.
Right?
So I spent a lot, but this I had to spend more time researching this goddamn primary than like any election I've ever voted in as a result. But the other cool thing, there were a big number of very progressive candidates, and New York did something we've never really had before. This is pretty new for us.
New York City.
Yeah, New York City. We have ranked choice voting. So I can be like, I want Wiley to be mayor, but if Wiley doesn't win, I'd rather have like Garcia than Adams. Like I could literally vote that way, and that is awesome.
There are other places that have been doing it that way, but most places in the United States, at least, do not do it that way. So,
yep. But
it's kind of annoying because when you're voting, right? It's like on the same ballot, you might have to vote for like city stuff, and you'll be able to rank all the city people like mayor.
Yep.
But then it'll be like, okay, vote for the Manhattan DA. The Manhattan DA is actually a state position, so there's no ranking there. You're just picking one person, and that's it.
And the state is weirdly deeply opposed to ranked choice voting. Really, generally, centrists and conservatives are opposed to it. In terms of popular opinion, people have a low opinion of ranked choice voting for some reason.
We voted for ranked choice voting. So
yep. You realize it looks like there's going to be an initiative on the ballot to overturn ranked choice voting in the general election this year.
Well, we'll see. I'll write.
Yep.
No.
But like that Manhattan DA race was a good example. There's one meh candidate and 2 like really progressive candidates. The 2 really progressive candidates are basically splitting the vote between each other. And because it's not ranked choice, likely the meh candidate will win. If it was ranked choice, all the progressive people would be like, here's my number 1, here's my number 2, not going to rank the meh one. So, but the opening bit of this, we voted. It was fine. And I have gotten more physical mail about this election than any election in my life. Our mailbox was full today of stuff that didn't make it in time for the election.
It's because there were more things, positions.
Yep.
Right?
And there were more people who were viable candidates for a lot of these positions. There was a lot going on. But it was notable that there's so much going on for not even a midterm election, but an off-year election. The elections that Americans basically don't vote in.
I've been voting for I've been voting in every election here for 10 years. And yet it's like, a lot of the earliest years I was living in New York City, I was voting, but I wasn't really voting that much, not because I wasn't going to vote, but because there were so many just like unopposed, you know, right? It's just like nobody, it's like, it was like, yep, that's the person. What are you voting for, right? It's like there wasn't a choice really. Even when I was like voting for de Blasio, it's like you go in and it's like, I guess I'm voting for de Blasio. No one else on this fucking ballot, right?
Yep.
And now you go in and people are actually trying to, to win. So there's all kinds of people on there now. So it's now a thing.
But my over-under now, I'm trying to figure out, I want to almost place a bet. What day will I receive the last piece of primary-specific mail from one of these candidates?
If it wasn't today, it'll be like tomorrow.
I got a ton today. I'm going to bet that I'll get the last one on Monday.
I got like 3 yesterday. I've done a really good job of unsubscribing.
Yeah. But they kept coming in.
I unsubscribe from like paper mail that comes in the mailbox. Like if I get a catalog, I go to the website of whoever sent the catalog.
Yep.
And I'm like, don't send me this shit. And it usually works. Sometimes you get one more catalog, but usually it works.
We got to pass a law that says you can never mail physical paper to anyone unless they sign a physical piece of paper multiple times saying they want it.
Post office will go out of business.
Post office should just be funded by tax dollars and shouldn't have to raise any money on its own.
You can't do one without the other. Right?
I mean, we could by just taxing the businesses, ban spam, and everyone who's been sending spam up to this point who is not a politician, tax them.
Anyway,
so in some news, this is not anime convention news, but it's convention news because, Otacon's happening. And now PAX West officially in September, way after Otakon, is also happening in person. And yeah, well, this is it. This is
a lot of things.
We have been to every single PAX in the United States with no exceptions starting in 2008. Like it's... PAX has been a huge part of our life.
Once or twice.
Yep, GeekNights appeared at 2 PAX Australias. But for the first time, we're going to skip a PAX because this PAX is happening too soon. They are having very strict mask requirements, proof of vaccination or testing, social distancing within the convention center, like people have to stay 6 feet apart from each other, and extremely limited capacity, which means, like, one, how do you even have tabletop if you got to stay 6 feet away from people? Like,
how do you even have what's even going to be at the PAX? Like,
it seems like it'll just be an expo hall and panels and nothing else.
They haven't really said what it's going to be, right? But they
haven't opened panel submissions.
You're gonna, they're going to do this security theater, the usual security theater, but also some like temperature check security theater.
I'm not opposed. The thing is, it's funny. Like, I am not opposed to things that make sense. Like, the metal detectors at conventions are just stupid. Like, they should go away. Metal detectors at airports make sense, but the TSA screening does not make sense. Like, there's obviously nuances there. I'm pretty cool with temperature sensors.
Part. It's the theater part, right?
Yep. But like the temperature check at the door, I'd be cool with all public venues not letting anyone in who has a high temperature.
Except the temperature check is heavily flawed, and those devices that they use, the ones that shoot from far away, are not so great.
Yeah, you'd have to have a secondary check. Obviously, it'd have to be done in a common sense way. But anyway, it's all moot.
Like the temperature check is basically theater, right? It's like it doesn't, and even if someone doesn't have, if your goal is only to prevent the spread of COVID, it's like
actually the temperature checks are fairly effective in a lot of non-US places. They've been commonplace for decades in like Asian countries, with significant success at preventing outbreaks locally because they catch people.
I've been reading that it's basically doesn't really help at all. It just makes people feel safer the same way that airport security does.
I mean, it depends a lot on how it's implemented. Like, so one time I was flying back to, I think, Singapore, and the distance center flagged me, so I had to go aside, and they did like 2 different devices, like real temperature checks, and grilled me where I'd been before they let me go. Anyway, that's all moot because the problem is PAX should not be happening if they need all these measures, because as long as these measures are required, there shouldn't be large mass conventions like this, full stop.
Yeah, at the PAX, we said this on our last Meta Moment, right? I said the same thing that I said there, which is like, I'm not getting on an airplane if you make me wear a parachute the whole time, because it's like, I'd rather just stay home, right? It's like, I'm not saying it's unsafe. I'm saying I'll just not going to do that, right? It's like, if it's not safe enough to not have to wear a parachute the whole flight, then that tells me that you think that there is something unsafe about the plane. Even if I'm going to live with the parachute, even if the mask and the vaccine is going to keep me safe, the fact that you're saying it's not safe enough to just go with no restrictions, just having a ball like a usual PAX, I'll just stay home and wait for a safe PAX.
So I heavily encourage you.
I posted that opinion in the PAX Reddit, and I was the most upvoted comment. So it shows, I think, while I have seen some people in comment threads around PAX communities online, you know, showing enthusiasm, like, hooray, PAX, finally, yes, right? I think the majority, it feels like the majority of
there might be a silent
like,
majority that was just not weighing in or not following cons because they weren't planning to go to any.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I mean, even in a normal time, normal-ish time, right? No such thing as a normal time, but the majority of the PAX community is silent online until the time comes, right?
Yep.
It's like until the last second, and then they go away, right? It's a very brief, you know, spike, right?
But I highly encourage you, do not go to fan conventions anytime soon. Like, good Lord.
I would not encourage anyone to go, but, you know, it's your choice to go. I'm not going.
Yep. We are not going. We're not presenting. And our official full policy is we will not attend any convention that requires masks, social distancing, or capacity limits beyond what the venue has required out for, like, fire code. Like, that's our line.
I mean, I don't need to get that specific. I can just be like, hey, if they feel it's necessary to take extra precautions because, you know, beyond normal, right, beyond the precautions that were taken in the before times, then that means that they feel there is an increased danger, and if there's increased danger, I'll just stay home. Right?
Well, I guess here's the line. Here's my line.
When they feel the convention is safe enough to hold using the same safety measures they did in 2018, 2019, then I'll go again.
If the sole measure was that the definitely theater quote increased sanitation, I would probably just ignore that and go to a con. But requiring masks, requiring social distancing, those are the big ones.
The final PAX East, it's like they were just cleaning everything, and you know what? That actually
didn't matter.
It didn't matter, right?
I'm still like that PAX really squeaked in under the line.
Yeah. But, you know, there is something, I guess, for another show to talk about. It's just, you know, forget, you know, this specific, you know, deadly plague, right? It's like there's always, you know, we've had PAXs in the past with the swine flu, right? And which is, I guess, not as deadly as COVID, but real bad. And we've also there's always been PAX pox, right?
Yep.
It's like, you know, we should maybe do something to, you know, increase, I'm not saying any, you know, these sort of draconian measures,
not like wearing masks for the rest of our lives when we're not personally sick, not like social distancing forever.
Right, but, you know, we should maybe, you know, do more to prevent the spread of the, you know, PAX pox. It just, not just conventions, all large gatherings of humans.
So I will say, I have...
Humans gather, even if it's like, oh, no pandemics or, you know, epidemics happening right now, but there's going to be a large gathering of humans at, like, this arena concert. Maybe you should do something, right? You know, at least think about it.
So, but what my anecdata is, I've gotten sick at conventions and large events like noticeably significantly less often since I started doing one thing, and that is not shaking hands with strangers.
Not touching people.
I'll only touch people I'm already touching and know, but like I won't shake hands with anybody when I go to conventions.
Or if I touch someone's hand, I wash my hands right away.
But I pretty much just avoid touching people's hands, and like my PAX poxes reduced by like 50 to 100%. Like, it was ridiculous.
It's been a long time since I've had any kind of pox.
Though I did get a bad cold after that last PAX East.
Oh, I didn't. I was fine.
Anyway, so in some other news, there's some Gundam.
Yeah, so Netflix has been making this Gundam Hathaway thing. If you don't know Gundam's story, right, there's Bright Noah, who was the captain of the white ship in the original Gundam, right? And his kid is Hathaway. So this is like Hathaway grown up Gundam, right? So it takes place like, you know, after it's in the same original Gundam, you know, UC, right? Whatever, but it's further in the future, a little bit, right? After, right? So it's been hyped. It's been coming. I think it's going to be out July something. I don't know exactly which day in July. You can set Netflix to give you a reminder. When
Netflix says June.
Yeah, I think it's been delayed. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, I don't know. I'm just using the article you sent me.
It's not out right now, and it's June 23rd is the point. And it was delayed. There, if you look in the news, like old news, you'll see news like Hathaway delayed. But anyway, I think to get people hyped and ready, and also to accompany it, they have put on Netflix the original 3 Gundam compilation movies. So the original Mobile Suit Gundam TV series was 80 episodes long. And I've watched it, but, I think for most people, watching all 80 episodes is probably not the best thing to do. A lot of those episodes are just Robot of the Week, right?
Oh, no, I was wrong. The thing you're talking about, the collection, came in June.
Yes, so you can watch that right now.
Yep.
So there are compilation movies, and usually I'm kind of meh on compilation movies in general because it's like, you're not getting the whole story. They cut out so much stuff, right? You're sort of, unless you know the story already, and then what's the point of it? But I actually haven't watched these compilation movies, but every anime nerd I know, Gundam nerds I know, they almost unanimously say, listen, you actually should, almost all people should just watch these 3 compilation movies and not watch 80 episodes of the original Gundam TV series. It's just better. It's just shorter. It covers everything you need to know, right? Just watch these 3 movies. So you can watch 3 movies and get the entire story of the original Mobile Suit Gundam. I think the only better option than that would be to read the entire manga, which I have, but it would be hard. I don't know if that's available digitally or not.
I have no idea.
So after the original Mobile Suit Gundam, there's Zeta Gundam, which you can or can't watch. It's up to you, in my opinion. It's long. I've seen it. It's 50 episodes. It really kind of meanders and drolls and, such and such. It does have a plot. It starts out with actually these other characters, like new characters, but then it switches back to the characters you care about, like Char and Amuro Ray and whatever, right? It's like, oh, no one cares about this show. We better go back to the characters.
See also Gundam Seed, various Tenchi spin-offs.
Yeah. And then after that is Double Zeta Gundam, which doesn't have the characters has some of the characters you care about, but it doesn't have Char or Amuro.
I've actually never seen any Double Zeta. You
don't need to. It's
not
garbage.
a moment of it. Good to know.
Yeah,
all right.
From what I've never seen it either, and everyone says it's garbage that I've heard, right? But anyway, and then after that is Char's counterattack. So you don't need, in my opinion, you don't really need to, even though technically Char's counterattack comes after Double Zeta, I don't think you need to watch Zeta and Double Zeta. I think you can watch these 3 movies and then watch Char's counterattack, which is also on Netflix now. There are compilation movies for Zeta Gundam. I guess you could watch those if you really wanted to. Maybe that's a good idea if you just end up really liking it, right? And you want to get a little bit more full story. I don't know if they're good or not because I watched all the 50 episodes of Zeta Gundam. Right? So, but yeah, it's like now Gundam is somewhat more accessible to the people, and there's going to be new original universe Gundam. So this is kind of exciting Gundam times here.
Yeah, maybe it is Gundam time because I was having a weird urge to watch Gundam Seed again because I randomly, like some playlist I was listening to, played one of the openings from that show, and I was just like, all right, Gundam Seed.
Yeah, I mean, have you watched the original Gundam?
No, I watched like 15 episodes of it, and then I got bored, and I watched the first compilation movie years ago. I never watched the other ones.
All right, well, we got these movies on Netflix.
I'm into it. Let's watch Odd Taxi first, because I feel like we want to talk about that.
I'm definitely watching that. I've been wanting to watch that for a while.
Multiple people have said Animal Fight Club and won't say anything else, so we'll see.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, in some other news, Tuca and Bertie, as you recall, basically got canceled. Got saved.
It was all I know is that it was a show that was on TV that people liked, and then it was canceled. That's what.
Oh, you never. It's it was a phenomenal show, and there's nothing else like it. It was very non-male, like it was not a male perspective. It was very diverse, set in New York City, very millennial in terms of like the problems people face and like social troubles, and it was also very
can't afford the rent.
Yeah, and it's very like. It takes absurd situations and animal people, kind of like the BoJack Horseman thing. But what it's about are the very real and serious problems that our generation has faced, and it addresses them directly, bluntly, and elegantly. Like, it's a fantastic show. So, of course, it got canceled. Like, it was too good. And it got saved. So, not only is season 2 now airing, but the first episode of season 2, and this seems to be a trend with Adult Swim because they did the same thing for the new season of Rick and Morty. The first episode is free legally on YouTube. Just watch the whole thing. It's just there.
That's how you do these days.
That is how you do these days. So having watched that first episode, one, if you haven't watched the original Tuca and Birdie, just go watch it. It is literally like it is a top tier show. I think everyone should watch. Season 2 is exactly that same energy. It's just as good. It picks right up. There is no loss of creativity, no loss of talent, no loss of energy.
Is it the same people working on it?
Same people, same characters. Like it might as well. This episode might as well have just come out.
Bought the show.
They just saved the show.
Yeah. Okay.
Nothing was broken, changed, or ruined about the show.
Because sometimes people will like buy the license and rescue a thing, but not actually. And then try to make it, but they didn't actually.
This is pretty much just more Tuca and Bertie, and I highly recommend it. In a little bit of news, we can't talk about it much because there's not much to talk about, but Uzumaki is getting an anime that is very much in a like black and white minimal animation interesting style, and we have several seconds of a teaser trailer, and that's basically it.
Yeah, I mean, there was that Junji Ito collection anime, and that was like a little bit disappointing.
Yeah,
right.
Like at least Yamishibai is like super limited animation on purpose, and also it's super short. Those episodes, it's more like someone telling you a campfire like ghost story. So we'll see. Yeah. I'm excited about this just because I love
Uzumaki has a little bit more like money behind it. And also, the Junji Ito collection was like an anthology, right? It was like all these little one-offs. This is like a full continuing serial. So I think that might, maybe there'll be more.
Yep, it's good. So it looks like there's more info than when we first looked at it. It's going to be a 4-episode miniseries in partnership with Studio IG or Production IG.
Okay, so there's going to be more production value behind it.
Yeah, so I'm cautiously optimistic about this.
Yeah, I mean, it is a continuing serial manga as opposed to like a little one-off short story, but it is only like a few volumes long. So I was wondering like how much material. But yeah, you said 4 episodes. That makes sense. Right?
Yeah. And one last little thing. You might remember way back, Anime News Nina kind of ended. We've talked about Anime's Nina.
That was way back.
Yeah. We talked about it moderately often on the show because the point you need to remember about it is that Anime News Network had this comic, and it was funny in a very real and direct way that you would not expect from the official comic of an outfit, really any media outfit.
Well, no, that used to be like a common thing, right? It's like Nintendo Power had the comic in the back.
The Nintendo Power comic was not real. It was not hard-hitting in any way. It would not make the kinds of jokes I would want as a Nintendo fan. It wouldn't make fun of Nintendo ever.
Just that having a comic, in the back of the journalistic publication, right?
No, that's relatively normal. And relatively common.
That was a thing. So anime, but it's like with websites, that wasn't really a thing, right? Journalistic websites don't really have like, I'm not talking about running the funny pages. I'm talking about like you have your own comic that is part of your magazine, even if your magazine is a website. So Anime News Network doing that, I thought was always, cool and like a throwback to things like, Nintendo Power, Nestor and whatever.
Yep. But the difference was Anime News Nina would
really good.
It would make the dark, real talk jokes about the realities of American anime fans, and it went to places I never expected it to go. So it looks like it has revived with Intern Annika, and there's a bunch of comics here, and the tradition continues.
Good.
Go check it out. All right, leave a little pause there. Put a little marker, put some metadata in this web. There's that metadata. All right. But anyway, things of the day. What do you got?
What do I have? Oh, so I've always had this idea, I guess, since college, right? I just thought of it, but I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of it, right? Because it's such an obvious and also dumb idea. To have a computer just generate like every photo ever, right? It's like it's possible. Right?
There was a project a while ago where someone had MIDI software that generated every melody that's possible with the Western notation system that was a certain length or less.
Sure, right. It's like, you could be like, okay, we'll pick 100 by 100 pixels or 200 by 200, and you have 32-bit color, right? So it's like, well, how many colors times how many pixels equals how many possible images? And it's like, that's enough to have like, it's like, yeah, most of them will just going to be static and noise, right? As you iterate or randomly go through every possibility. But, in there somewhere is every person naked, right? It's like, it's like, it's every photo of everything, every building ever, every building that doesn't even exist yet, video, every character from everything ever in every pose ever, right? It's like, the problem is to generate all those images would take more time and storage space than there are like, particles in the universe. So as if you keep your problem space small, it becomes possible, right? I want to generate every black and white image. I suddenly cut down the colors, right?
Yeah.
That's 2 by 2 pixels, where there's 16 such images. All 16 images, there they are, right? Congrats. I want to generate every 1 pixel image in black or white. It's like, congrats, there's 2 of them, the black and the white one, right? But here, somebody took that idea and in an really interesting fashion, right? They've managed to keep the problem space small enough to be feasible, but constrained enough where all the images are interesting. What they're doing is not limiting the number of colors, right? What they're doing is limiting the basically like you must use every color once, right? Every single, right? It's 255 times 255 times 255, right? Because RGB, right, is 16.7 million colors or whatever. So that it's like make an image that's 16.7 million pixels and has every color in exactly 1 pixel. And most of those images are just going to be like a, like a white noise kind of thing or some kind of pink noise or something.
But I see scrolling down, I see the Mona Lisa. I see the Nevermind album cover.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you can only use each color 1 time, right? But you've got a lot of similar colors. You can group them together at least. And yeah, this website, allRGB, attempts to, create a database that has, I guess, eventually every image that consists of all RGB colors in that space, exactly 1 color per pixel. And there's a lot of fascinating images there. And there's, more all the time. I presume they don't have them all yet.
So I was just thinking, these are probably really hard to compress. And as I'm scrolling through, yep, these are like 50, 60 megabyte images.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
it's still really cool.
Yeah, this is super cool.
I mean, my idea of doing like every black and white, 16 color image that is, that's a small size, I would have had way less interesting images than this.
Right? Yep. So I decided, because I have a huge backlog of fun things of the day, so I decided that I would force myself to pick one that was also related to colors. So in Super Mario 2, the remake of Doki Doki Panic in the United States, if you look at the characters, like the sprites, everyone but Toad, there are too many colors in those sprites to be represented by sprites in the Nintendo Entertainment System. Mm-hmm. There's one too many colors. There's no way for Mario to have red, that fleshy color, the blue, and transparency, because one of the colors is always transparency, and white. So this video, which is not that long, explains what they did. And the fascinating part about this is how fucking unnecessary this was. It was solely for style points and nothing else. Doki Doki Panic did not do this. They just used 4 colors in the sprites. And Nintendo was like, well, for Super Mario 2, we really want that 5th color. Do ridiculous bullshit to make that 5th color appear.
Okay.
Do you know, like, the deal? Like, why?
I watched the video a while ago, but I forget because it's ridiculous bullshit.
So you can, I won't say the deal, but the hint, and I remember this from when I was a kid, the hint that will tell you what's going on is when you open doors and do certain things in the game, the character's eyes will flash. They'll like flicker at a steady rate whenever that happens. And only whenever that happens. And that should be enough of a clue to figure out what they did. But if you don't care, just watch this video. This video is not like the NES videos.
Use this channel for things of the day several times.
I have not used Retro Game Mechanics Explained. There's a different channel.
I feel like I have definitely used it before.
You might have. Typically I link to like 40 or 50 minute long videos that get way deep into what the Nintendo was doing. This one,
this channel does that also. They
yep,
do
but
long
but
ones.
this video in particular is super accessible if you know nothing about programming or the Nintendo Entertainment System.
That's a really good channel though in general, right?
Yeah.
That's why we're in multiple things of the day. So.
Yep. In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, which I am reading, The Tale of Genji. That motherfucker. How many times is there a scene where someone is trying to tell him something and he just doesn't give a shit, but as soon as they mention something scandalous, he suddenly wakes up, like he suddenly perks up and gets real interested.
Yeah, all he cares about, ladies gossip, right? He's not a good person.
Nah. He's not like
the titular character doesn't have to be like a hero or a good guy. He's just like
he's just a guy. He's a guy walking around, looking around. That is kind of
mischief.
I feel like walking around, looking around, occasionally making trouble is kind of the entire Tale of Genji so far.
He's like just this really self-interested dude, right? Who, sometimes cares or pretends to care, sometimes doesn't, but gets away with a lot of shit because he's good-looking and talented.
Yep. Kind of like real life. You can get away with a lot if you're good-looking and talented, unfortunately.
Yep.
Otherwise, as we talked about before, we will not be live at PAX West 2021, but we will be live on Saturday, July 17th at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time in the PAX 2 Twitch stream with Atari Game Design. It's all
PAX
new
East
content.
Online.
Yep, PAX East online. Totally.
PAX West is going to be IRL, and we're going to be AWOL.
Yep.
PAX East is going to be digital, so we'll be there.
We might be doing something during PAX West that does not involve PAX West, but I'm not going to say anything about that, so no one can yell at me for not doing it if we don't do it.
And that's got nothing to do with anyone who's listening to this. I don't even know why you're bringing it up.
Well, because things will come out of it, possibly.
That's their problem.
If we do the well, anyway, I'm not going to speak to that. What else is going on? We can't really go anywhere yet, so
nope. You should find us. We're on the internet. So you somehow found this podcast. I assume if you're listening, 99% chance you already know. But in case you're somehow a brand new listener, our podcasts are available on like every fucking platform. We have community on every platform. We got the Twitters. We even, we got the everything, right? We got a forum. We got Discord. We got like every freaking place that's on the internet. We're there.
I also realized something funny.
YouTube.
Despite the fact that GeekNights is 4 different nights, we started around the same time as Anime World Order. In fact, they started a little bit before us. We've done more Wednesday episodes than they have done episodes.
Why are you making fun of other podcasts for us?
Because I just realized that recently out of nowhere.
One of their anime episodes
is like 3 hours. They basically review 3 shows, or 3 comics every time they do a show.
And actually know what they're talking about. That's like times 9.
We also cheat by talking about non-anime and like other cartoons. Like Wednesdays are not anime days; they're just cartoon days.
Sure.
But we've been podcasting since 2005, and if you somehow enjoy this, we don't like a lot of podcasts charge money for their archives. Yeah, we don't. They're all just there, everyone, all the way back to 2005. If you're desperate to listen to us have very 2005 opinions.
That I don't agree with anymore.
Yeah. So, Batman. We've talked about, I realize we've only talked about Batman, like, at length, twice on Geek Nights. In 2007, we reviewed Batman The Dark Knight Returns, which, regardless of your opinions on the author of that work, I think it's still a stand-up Batman work. But
one of the best Batman comics.
Yep. Yeah. And we talked about BTAS, Batman the Animated Series, last year.
That's still the best Batman thing there is.
I think that is the best Batman thing there is. But what we want to do tonight is just talk about Batman as a concept, the entire oeuvre of Batman.
Yeah. Right. Well, we did a Spider-Man show, right? So we might as well do a Batman show, right? Even it out, right?
Because there's a lot
fair shake in the Marvel versus DC, right? Biz going on. So.
Yep. Batman is honestly kind of the only DC thing I've liked consistently at any point in my life.
It's weird because like sometimes I like Batman a lot, and sometimes I just don't give a shit.
Yeah. Well, like it's interesting because I've really like when Batman is in other shows, like when Batman's hanging out with like Justice League, whatever kind of stuff, it's never interesting. Most Batman things I actually don't like. Like most of the live action Batman movies, I deeply disliked. I actually I'm not even joking. I legitimately like the Michael Keaton live action Batman's kind of the most of any live action Batman.
1989 one's the best live action one.
Because it was weird in a good way.
No, but yeah, I think that, all of the big time underwear pervert superheroes, Marvel or DC, who've been around for a long time and have been very popular, right? And have been adapted, have had their stories adapted into different mediums, right? They've all the characters individually have taken on there's different takes on them, right? It's like even, it's like we talk about Spider-Man. It's like, how many different takes there are on Spider-Man. Yeah. There's like happy-go-lucky Spider-Man, right? It's different people are Spider-Man. It's not always Peter Parker.
I mean, we just talked about Spider-Man 2099, where he's a cyberpunk anti-hero.
Right, but even if you just only look at Peter Parker Spider-Man, it's like, there's jerky Peter Parker Spider-Man, having a fun time, sad Peter Parker Spider-Man, right? So many different takes on it, right? But I think of all of the major characters, Batman has like the most varied takes over time, and also the most varied takes simultaneously.
Yeah. Like right now, there's some other Batman going on. There's a live action Batman movie coming, and like Batman is a big part of Harley Quinn. Like Batman's the Wolverine of the DC universe.
Even if you look at Wolverine, it's like, okay, at one point Wolverine was doing this, at another point he was doing that.
But he's always kind of the same, just doing different things. Batman is a different Batman.
Right. You can look at Batman at any point in, originally Batman was just detective-y, right?
Yep.
Even had a gun and shit at the start, right? Then there was the campy Adam West style, which the comics were also doing in the Silver Age, right?
Which I do like.
And then after the Silver Age, right, you get into the Neil Adams and the Frank Miller Batman, and then late 80s, suddenly then is when you BTAS comes around 90s. By then you've got all the different Batmans going on at once, right? Super Friends Batman was actually before then. But yeah, it's like you can at any one time, right, go to you can go in like one day. You could like go to a comic book store, and in the comic book store, you could find like current Batman things, and like one's a gritty one, like one's got like like R-rated shit in it, one's like for kids having a good time, one's real campy, right? And then you can go watch Batman on TV and get a different take at the same time, and then you can go to a movie theater and get yet another take, all in like the same fucking day, right? And you go to the toy store and you can see like two lines of toys that are different, right? It's like, it's one character, right, at the core, but it's actually like several, like they're using the character to appeal to several different audiences simultaneously at all times, right? It's like, let's get the kid, we'll have this, kids Batman, edgelord Batman, right? It's just like they got every Batman going on at all times for everybody.
So in terms of like Batman films, because we can talk about Batman, we can sort of bucket this into like different areas of Batman.
However you want to bucket it.
Yeah, we'll start with films, because honestly, I'm literally the Michael Keaton 1989 Batman, I think, is the best live action Batman film ever made.
Yep, same. I mean, a lot of people love those newer ones, but I watched two of them, right? I watched the Batman Begins one, right? I didn't like that one.
I've watched a bunch of them, and every one of them left me very dissatisfied. Well, I guess I've never. Let's see. I got a whole list here of films I never saw. Apparently, there was a 1943 Batman and a 1966 Batman that I never saw. Oh no, I saw that. 66 I saw.
66 one. The
43 I never saw. I did not know that was a thing.
I did not see that one, no. But the Adam West one's the 66 one.
Oh, it's a 15-chapter theatrical serial.
Yeah, okay, there were a lot of serials back then. There was a Captain America one also.
Yep. So 1966 and 1989 Batman were the first two live-action Batman things I saw, which is basically the beginning, except for these 40s serials. And it's funny, as a kid, I loved the shit out of the Batman movie, the Adam West one, but I kind of like with Project A-ko and anime and a lot of other things, I had no idea it was supposed to be funny as a kid. Like, I just took it.
When I was a kid, I would watch Adam West Batman on TV, and I didn't realize it was supposed to be like, stupid.
Yep. I was just like, oh shit, a bomb. What's he gonna do? Like,
right. I was like,
oh no, the Joker's coming.
like it was real, you know. And now I know better, so it doesn't really hold up for me, but it holds up in a nostalgia way, like as a piece of artwork, but it's not a thing that I like, you know, can like watch and enjoy and care about sincerely, right? It's more like a cool painting to put on the wall that's kitschy.
Yep.
You know?
But I remember this moment when 1989 Batman came out. My dad went to see it in the theater to figure out if it was suitable for us kids to see, because we were like, I wasn't that 1989. And he came home, and I just remember
I think we just went to see it. I don't remember.
But I remember we did end up seeing it, of course. But I remember the conversation was roughly along the lines was like, how was it? My dad's like, it was dark. And and my mom's like, no, like too dark for the kids. And he's like, no, like it was so dark you couldn't see anything on the screen.
Yeah, it was.
We got to go to a better theater. Because there was a crappy theater near us and a better theater that was further away. But I remember this was the movie that introduced me as a kid to the concept of nerve gas, which was terrifying to me as a kid.
I never really thought about that.
Like, I'd never encountered the concept. Like, I knew the idea, kids know about things like quicksand and poison gas, but nerve gas and like that being Joker's thing was actually really scary to a kid.
I guess to you, I never thought about it much.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed it mostly because it had that like Tim Burton weird edge. Like it felt like a weird, larger than life comic movie. And Michael Keaton, I think, did a pretty good job playing a Bruce Wayne Batman. Like it didn't, I think a lot of people think that the Michael Keaton Batmans don't feel right because they're used to so much Batman media that is just a big jaw going, I'm Batman, and punching people, and kind of forget like Batman had a lot of different incarnations. And Michael Keaton was the first time we saw a live action Batman that wasn't Adam West.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that one also.
I imprinted on him like a baby duckling. He's my Batman.
I think that, that 1989 one also sort of had that, it didn't give Batman any actual supernatural or fantastic
Not at all.
powers.
He just had equipment and money and resolve.
But it had, it felt like, it had sort of that same sort of magical element, right? Like when he flies the friggin' bat ship, like he's got like an airplane, it's shaped like a bat, but
it was so
fly,
like
obviously.
theatrical.
He eclipses the moon in ET-like fashion, right? It's like,
But it almost felt operatic or like a stage play in that there would be like the swelling music and then the Batmobile comes out of its hole. Like there were so many just set piece scenes that put you in this mood that really no Batman movie since the second Michael Keaton Batman movie has ever really done well, in my opinion. I did really like Batman Returns as well. I don't know if I'd have to watch them both again. I haven't seen either one since I was in like high school.
I mean, soon after that, the 89 Batman, right? There was the 1990 Dick Tracy that I think sort of had a lot in common with it.
Oh yeah, that movie is underrated.
Even though that was not, it was not Tim Burton, I think it carried,
I saw a thing recently talking about
aesthetic elements.
Talking about how they got that aesthetic, because color grading didn't really exist the way we have it today back then. They made ridiculous sets to like film that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I guess Batman movies, I like, even the second one, Batman Returns. I like that one. Right?
Yep. Well, because I had these ideas of Catwoman, and then Catwoman appears, and Catwoman's weird, and the Penguin was weird, and it was funny.
I didn't actually fully understand what was going on in that movie until I watched it again when I was older.
It was just like a bunch of scenes linked together, and there's Penguin. All right, let's see what Penguin's like.
I was just like, okay, Batman is good guy, the other guys are bad guys. I don't know what's going on here. Yeah. But the Jim Carrey Riddler one where Two-Face, right? That one.
That was Batman and Robin? Yeah, Batman and Robin. No, Batman Forever.
Batman Forever? It was Batman Forever. So
that one I bounced off of hard.
I don't know if that one was, I don't think it was as good as those other two, but because of just the time I was born, right? We saw it I've probably seen that one the most because it was on TV like constantly. Like on HBO or something. I don't know. It was just on our TV a lot for some reason. And it was I just saw it a lot.
Saw a lot of Val Kilmer, Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for it, right? It just happened to be on our TV a lot. So I saw it many times. And that was also around the peak Jim Carrey times, right? Yep. when there was like nothing negative to say about him, and I thought he was really hilarious. You know, like I thought The Mask was like a terrific movie, right? You know, whatever.
Yeah, I guess for me it's funny because by
so I was
1995,
enjoying it at the time,
I was
right?
such a
But I don't-
weeb that I did not like these Batman movies, and I was watching mostly anime.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but you know, I guess nowadays it's sort of like, oh, that one, but I just seen it so much, it's like imprinted on my brain, so it gets like plus nostalgia points
Nah.
just in me, even though I recognize that those are only points that I'm only giving it, that it doesn't.
Yeah,
deserve.
I mean, I do that to things. Batman and Robin, though, was the one
It
that
does have some good entertaining elements, though. It's like it's not all bad. It's not like a garbage one.
it's not
like
all
the-
band like Batman and Robin.
Right, that's the Schwarzenegger Mr. Freeze one.
Yeah, that one just.
The only thing that's good is laughing at how silly the
And I think part of that drop was that Batman
we saw that in
Forever.
I think we saw that in the theater when we were in college.
Batman Forever was a Joel Schumacher, but Tim Burton was still involved. I'm pretty sure by the time they got to Batman and Robin, there was zero Tim Burton influence. And then Tim Burton also became a much more mixed bag down the road.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that's how, you know, art is, right?
Yeah.
No one, you know, it's the people who can hit all home runs, it's like are so few.
But then there was a long gap, and I remember because Batman Begins was like the next big reboot of Batman, and that I think that's the kind of Batman a lot of people think of, like Christopher Nolan Batman.
Well, because what happened is we had this, you know, the crash at the, you know, towards the late 90s, right? Not, you know, the comics books weren't, you know, selling anymore, right? That whole thing was over with. And then also, you know, the movies, right? It's like they were less good,
Yep.
right? And the whole thing fell apart, right? And everyone sort of fell out of love with superheroes. And it wasn't until later that someone, you know, it's like, listen, the only reason, you know, people do like that stuff, you just haven't been making good ones, and you know,
Yep.
you stopped because Hollywood's conservative and, you know, wants to like bet on things that it, you know, it thinks are gonna get, instead of, you know, taking a risk, right? If they had just kept producing but gotten the quality up, it's like people would have, you know, suddenly come back for it, right? But I guess it's also there's a fatigue, or if you do too many, right? And you make them not good, right? If there's too many
Yep.
not good ones, right? So it's like with, you know, all these Marvel movies they're cranking out. It's like I haven't watched any of them, but or almost any of them.
But there's also like
you
a
know,
long.
the ones they keep cranking out, it's like are good enough, or at least enough of them are good enough, right? That they can keep the thing going.
It's tough though because
If they put out 5 stinkers in a row, you can watch how fast they just can't, and there won't be any more, and they'll close the whole shop and try again in like 10, 15
I guess
years.
my problem was a lot of the Batman movies ended up feeling really Batman-y in like a predictable, boring way, to the point that I'd get bored watching them because they felt like nothing interesting or new was going to happen. Just Batman expected things would happen, but there wasn't as much. I don't want to say there wasn't as much artistry, but there wasn't the artistry and style that I was seeking from superhero movies anymore. Like as they transition from
sometimes that works. You get a James Bond movie, right? It's like, yeah,
Yep.
just do the same thing every time, but it's all good.
But well, then you flip it up, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But like, Batman Begins was, instead of the Danny Elfman music, they had Hans Zimmer, which really set a different tone. Coupled with the kinds of ways that Batman solved problems in that movie, felt a lot more like punch someone until they tell you the secret, as opposed to be clever and have like fancy super. Like, it rubbed me the wrong way, Batman Begins. Plus the fact that it was 2 completely unrelated movies bolted together and way too long.
Yeah. I think didn't we
140 minutes, that movie.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on from movies because we talked about these a lot, I think.
I was gonna say, but yeah, those newer ones that everyone loves the shit out
They're
of.
not
right? Like,
good.
It's like I'm not, you know, the Heath Ledger one where everyone is like, you know, where he died or whatever, and everyone's like thinks it's the greatest movie ever made. It's like, nah, I don't understand why you like this.
So I
unless
noticed
you
something
like
because I did see it. I realized something about it. That was the one. And there's a pattern of this where the villains have good scenes and Batman is super boring and unnecessary to the movie. Like the villains just ended up being more interesting on screen and would steal the show, which I think back in Venture Brothers, there's this random scene where this assassin is like, I'm a fan of Batman, and he bonds with a kid, but he's going to kill the kid's dad. And the kid's like, wait, I thought you were a good guy. You love Batman. Batman wouldn't do this. And the guy's like, but you realize I only like Batman for his villains. Batman villains were always pretty good.
I mean, that is it. Well, some of them are, right?
Well, the problem is the core set of Batman villains are good.
I do think that is that maybe, one thing that, sets Batman apart from almost every other superhero, right? It's like, people know Spider-Man, but like, what's the Spider-Man villains? It's like, yeah, there are some okay ones, but it's like, Dr. Octopus or Green Goblin or whatever.
Yeah, but like, okay, Hobgoblin, just like slightly crooked Green Goblin.
Like, the Rhino, it's like, what? The Lizard? It's like,
yeah. I could probably make up a couple Spider-Man villains and you'd be like, yeah, that sounds like a Spider-Man villain that I wouldn't care about.
Before there were any Avengers movies, right, at all, right? So if you had, people knew who Captain America was. People knew Iron Man, at least there was some guy named Iron Man, right? They knew that there was a Hulk for sure, especially because of the TV show. But if you had asked anyone name an Avengers villain, only a comic book nerd would have been able to tell you any, right? Before any of these movies. Now that there's movies, people can tell you. But before the movies, could people have named an Avengers villain?
Yep.
Right? An enemy of Iron Man, right?
But Batman, like off the top of my head, like the Penguin, Catwoman, who's not complicated, Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn,
a villain for Superman besides Lex Luthor, right?
Clayface, Two-Face.
Right. It's like, Batman villains were actually like at the same level as, heroes. They could just have their own comic.
Yep.
A lot of them. Not all of them, right? Some of them are still out there, like Scarecrow or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like,
but the thing about those villains is that in BTAS, Batman the Animated Series did this best, but the Batmans I've liked, the villains are usually tragic as opposed to just evil. There's always something tragic and sad. Like a lot of Batman the Animated Series episodes ended with, well, that was a tragedy and that villain died but probably didn't deserve to die. They were bad, but they weren't that bad.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, if you look at any superhero story, period, right? You have this hero who has their own story, right? Batman's story, his parents died, he's rich, he's got problems, so he goes out and does this Batman thing, right? And you can only, it's like, that's the story, the end. It's like, what more of the story, unless you're going to like wrap up the story or advance that story and change the status quo, which you really can't do, right? It's like, there's nothing to tell there. So if you make one Batman movie, you can tell that story, right? If you make two Batman movies, you can't just tell the story again unless you start over, which they've done a few times.
Which we talked about this in the past on GeekNights. I'm real sick of, well, let's watch 30 minutes of Spider-Man's origin story again, the movie.
Right, exactly. So you have to, like, if you make another thing, the story is not, the hero's story. The story is the villain's story. It's like, all right, Spider-Man's origin in issue 1. Issue 2, Green Goblin's story, Spider-Man beats him. Issue 3, it's like Mr. Freeze's story, Batman beats him, right? It's like you need, to tell the villain stories as you go forward, right?
Yep.
So
Batman in some of the best Batman stories almost ends up not so much direct, like he defeats the villain, but often indirectly, and usually he's just the one who bears witness to their downfall and their tragedy.
Well, because he doesn't have any actual superpowers, right? Which also sets him apart from the other superheroes who all have at least some kind of power. He's just a rich dude, right? Iron Man is also a rich dude, but he puts on this iron suit that does things that are not physically possible, right? Yep. So it's sci-fi supernatural, right? Even though it's not hard sci-fi.
Though along those lines is something I got to get out that I've been thinking about a lot. It's come up in a bunch of conversations recently, but I've thought this even since I was a kid. A not insignificant number of Batman villains are not wrong. Like in BTAS, Poison Ivy, pretty much spot on and doing the right thing, and Batman was wrong to oppose her.
That depends on which one, but...
Well, when Poison Ivy was basically going after all the rich people.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of them are doing things with like a good, motive, but are doing things in a vigilante sort of way, which is the
Yep.
story they're trying to tell. Is like saying, hey, look, one person is seeking vigilante justice against like evil corporations,
And
right?
another
And here's
vigilante is
Batman.
seeking justice against the vigilante.
Right. And, Batman is like, I'm the only one who's, the extra legal, and he serves, he does serve the law basically, right? He wants, people are doing illegal things, right? Or things that he views as harmful.
But a lot of
to-
times, the villain who turns into a supervillain is doing evil, but was also wronged, usually by a corporation or someone who technically didn't do anything illegal. So Batman can't do anything to them.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they are arguably the cause of the supervillain in the first place.
And Batman doesn't try to do anything to them.
But I saw
usually,
a really fascinating recent discourse talking about how in the original incarnations of Batman,
the original one, he was just like a detective with a gun.
Yep,
right?
but
He's
back
just like,
then there was policing in America. This is a whole topic we can't get into with any significant depth, nor are we experts. But up until there was the North Hollywood shootout and a couple other incidents, there were some eras in American history where, irrespective of the problems of police and how we need to change that whole landscape, but criminals would literally outgun the police and local cops were barely armed. And Batman as a character was basically someone who had way more weapons than the actual police to deal with supervillains who had way more weapons than the actual police. And that was sort of a story that resonated with a lot of people. But as time went on, modern police, like, look at actual fucking cops in America today. They have better equipment. They literally have equivalent equipment to what Batman Michael Keaton had in the movie.
Yeah, they're just Batman, right? There's other than the unrealistic things like the flying ship that won't.
Yep.
that
But
won't
like the
actually fly,
Batmobile,
or
a local cop
batarangs, right?
cars could
Batarangs
take
and
out the Batmobile today.
Yeah, batarangs and grappling hooks are. I guess grappling hooks can be somewhat realistic, but not.
I mean,
really.
SWAT teams.
Yeah, I mean boomerangs are real, but a batarang would not.
Yeah,
really work.
but like
but it's like.
In old Batman, the Batmobile is basically a tank, and it can deal with the crazy supervillain shit. But now the cops have tanks.
Yeah, so and the Batmobile you see in most Batman things, sometimes it literally is a tank, but it's like an actual tank in the real world would beat most Batmobiles.
Yep.
Right? It's like
So as a result, what is Batman? In the old days, Batman's power was, I am powerful enough when the law enforcement isn't. And that's my story. The story shifted over time in most Batman things into, I don't have to follow the rules. I am more powerful because
the cops have their hands tied. They can't just go and arrest this.
Which in reality
guy.
translates to beating people half to death to force them to talk and torture and extra legal nonsense. And Batman kind of turned into 24.
Right, and there's also the Batman who's just such a good detective. The cops can't figure it out, right?
Yep.
It's like something shady.
I like that
on.
Batman a lot. That kind of Batman I really enjoy.
It's like there's something going on, right? And the cops are dum-dums and they can't.
Oh, what was?
it out
I think it was in VTAS.
Because it's something so advanced, right? And something so out there. Because while Batman doesn't have anything supernatural or super going on besides money and some slightly unrealistic weaponry,
Yep.
right? All the villains have unrealistic shit going on, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Freeze is out there freezing shit. It's like that's superpowers, right? Fucking Clayface, it's like that's superpowers. It's like, and this normal dude's gonna go and fight that,
God, I just remember there's one scene, one of my favorite scenes, I think it was in BTAS, was Batman like broke into some criminal's house to like read some documents to figure out a crime. And some goon walks into the room, like doing a patrol, and sees Batman. And Batman just looks at him, and he looks at Batman, and he just backs out of the room and shuts the door. And the other goon's like, what's going on in there? And he's like, nothing. We've gone on a while about Batman. I feel like got a lot more to say, but
I mean, there's how many decades worth of Batman shit to talk
and also,
about, right?
despite the fact that I don't consume a lot of Batman media, like I have consumed
it's such a huge cultural thing. It's like
Yeah.
everyone's got something to say about it. If you're, especially if you're a nerd of any kind, it's like you've seen some Batman shit. You know what the deal is.
Yep. I will say I do enjoy Batman in Harley Quinn, the current like show that has Batman in it, because he's just a side character. Like Batman shows up, like when Batman would show up.
I mean, I think that one, like I was saying before, right? The story becomes the villain story, right? You can't just tell the hero's story every time. I do think that in general, right, the heroes that have been around a long time, if you've heard their story enough times already that you're no longer excited by it, that I think a lot of the best comic stories out there, you know, superhero comic stories, regardless of medium, are the ones where the superhero, you're just in the world where the superhero is, right? It's like one of my favorite Batman comics is Gotham Central. It's it's about the cops. It's not about Batman. He exists. You see him sometimes, right? But it's just fucking cops in Gotham.
Did we never review that? I thought we reviewed that. I read it.
I don't know. Maybe, but it's just about the cops and, you know, who have to work in a city where there is a Batman. So it's mostly like watching, you know, a Law and Order, even though I guess that's more about lawyers, or a CSI kind of a little bit. You know, but again, the things that they're tracking down are sometimes villains, right? And a Batman exists, right? So imagine you're watching Law and Order and a Batman exists, right? In wherever city the CSI is, I don't know, right? And it's, you know, much in the same way that fucking, right, Dark Knight Returns, the comic, right? It's like, yeah, it's like, it's not about Superman, but Superman exists, right? I
say this a lot. It's one of my canned lines. That is my favorite Superman comic.
It's a better Superman comic than a Batman comic, I think, right? It's like, because it's like, yeah, there's a god who's flying around somewhere. It's like, that's way more interesting than whatever the fuck you're focusing on, old man Batman. Who gives a shit about that? There's a god who exists in this world, and you occasionally see glimpses of them, and when they appear, they act in a godlike fashion, right? It's like, oh, fuck.
So yeah, I think Batman will continue to loom large, possibly literally. And
you know, I think the thing is, you know, I started by talking about how all the different, you know, takes on Batman. But what the thing is, I feel like they're running out of takes. It's like there's a whole set of them, right? And they keep, some of them are on, some of them are off. Right?
They almost like rotate through whatever is currently popular or whatever is needed to put Batman into another property.
Yeah, the campy one is currently like turned off, but all the other ones are on, right?
Yep.
I feel like they should, you know, it would be appropriate and also probably good to do a new one, right? You know, we don't need to throw Batman out, right? But let's do, you know, we went from campy Batman to gritty Batman to, you know, it's like come up with do Batman in a completely new way that hasn't been done before. It's a challenge.
Has there been a cyberpunk anti-hero Batman?
I don't know. But
set in a near future dystopia?
I'm just saying, let's go for it, right? It's like, you know, that's appropriate to do, right?
Batman who realizes the cops are corrupt and tries to fix things?
Yeah, do the anti-cop Batman. That's something appropriate for the times, right? You talked about how that original Batman was appropriate for the times, right? Yep. Let's get a Batman who's appropriate for
Have a Batman where the Gotham police are the villain.
Yeah,
like go take that route.
Batman shows up and it's like, you know, the villain is like, hey,
like Batman ends up like busting someone out of Arkham to help deal with those cops.
Or he goes back home and he's Bruce Wayne. He has billions and he uses the billions to fix the problems.
Yep.
Right.
He starts funding the Batman franchises. There you go. Batman funds Batman franchises to go do good works that are more focused and local, and that's the story. And then you get every episode or like every season you focus on another Batman franchise.
I don't know about that, but I think, you know, it's like you want to show us something unrealistic.
The listener, give me a young cyberpunk Batman.
Not evil.
Give me young cyberpunk Batman with old Bruce Wayne mentor. Yeah, Batman.
Oh, we somehow went this whole show without mentioning the best Batman character, which is Albert the Butler.
Oh my God! My favorite incarnation of Albert is still. Well, the problem is Albert is so consistently good in everything. Yeah. Even a bad Batman movie, Alfred is just fantastic.
Yeah. All right, Alfred, not Albert.
Yeah, Alfred. But the BTAS Alfred was such a like. He would I realized very often he would be like, "Is this really the best use of your money, Bruce? Perhaps there's a better way to solve that problem." And Bruce is like, "Shut up! I'm gonna go punch that guy." Oh, what was the one where Alfred has to defend the lair and Batman's not home? I forget what comic that was in.
Oh, and he's got all he just he
Yep.
starts shooting it.
I feel like that happens in multiple Batman comics. That scene.
Probably, yeah.
In one of the movies, I don't think it ends well for Alfred.
Hmm.
I feel like we could do a show at some point on cool butlers in media.
All right, name another cool butler.
The one in trying to think of things that aren't just Batman. They're all just iterations of Batman, or things that are based on Batman, like Big O. God damn it! Just do a show on Alfred.
I don't know enough. I just did it. I just did the whole show.
I think we're done here. I was just trying to end the show. We went on way too